Hi everyone, this is Nikki Jackson from Southwest Tennessee Community College, and I'm about to go over several examples from Self-Check 2.2 for Math 1710. I would like to say that this is one of the more tedious sections of pre-cal, and the reason being is because you have to do a whole lot of writing, and you might even think that it's not necessary. I also apologize in advance for what I call my scribble scrabble, which is my very poor penmanship. Well, hopefully you will be able to decipher it and we can be successful in this course. So let's go ahead and get started. As you can see, you have the following function given to you. There are multiple parts for this particular problem, and also notice that the answers are already printed out. When it's your turn to do this, you do not necessarily have to put these answers in order, because as long as there's a pair, just like a left shoe and a right shoe, you can still wear your shoes even though they might be, mismatched, but they still make a pair. Anyway, to make a long story short, let's figure out how to make these rational zeros. So for this particular one, what you have to do is pay close attention to this 50 right here. So 50 is your last term, and 1 is going to be your first term. What I'm going by are your coefficients. So my apologies in advance for all of this, but hopefully you'll be able to get it. And you may notice that my notebook had a lot of papers ripped out though, because I was getting flustered too, trying to make it as easy as possible, and I couldn't find an easier way. So you have to figure this out by looking at the factors of your constants, which are 50, and then the factors of your lead coefficient. So those were 50 and 1. So all of them can be positive and negative, because remember, two negatives give you a positive. So the factors of 50 are 1 and 50, 2 and 25, and 5 and 10. The factors of 1 are just 1 itself. So far, so good. Now it's asking you to list all the rational zeros. Well, I eliminated the 1 and the negative 1 because 1 can go into everything. However, 2 is something that can only go into your even number. So that's why I started using synthetic division with the 2 first. So once you do all of this, you're trying to see if there's going to be a remainder of anything, and therefore you see this blank, there is no remainder. And by the way, I forgot my negative right there. So my apologies for that, people. That's supposed to be a negative 50. So voila. So using synthetic division were the 2, and again, the 2 came from because other than 1, that was your next smallest one that can go into both of them. We're namely the 50. So using synthetic division, bring the first coefficient down. So 2 can go into 1. 2 times 1 is 2. There's a 0 right here. And then you got 2 times 0 is 0. Bring down your 25. And 2 times negative 25 is negative 50. Therefore, you have a 0 remainder. So once you finish doing that, you're going to rewrite it. So now I have x squared minus 25. Normally there's a middle term, but notice how you have a 0. So now I'm going to factor this out. Now once I factor it out, I know this one to be a positive 5 and a negative 5. Now very much like what we did for section 2.1, we can figure out what the zeros are by letting these two equal 0. So I know that's going to be negative 5 and 5. And remember, I started off with 2. So here go all of your possible rational zeros. Or actually, they're your zeros. So cool beans? Yay! Here goes a more complicated one now. Using the rational zero theorem. So for this particular one, notice how again you're looking at all of your constants or your factors for your constants in your first one. So here goes my scribble scrabble. So you had an n term of a constant of 10 and a first coefficient of 1. So your factors of 10, which are negative 10, so let me show you what that was again. Here's your last term, negative 10, and then there's your leading coefficient of 1. So we know the factors of negative 10 and 1. So you have plus and minus 1 and 10, and plus and minus 2 and 5, and then of course the plus 1. Now since it's only asking for those, that's your answer. But make sure you type it in carefully, especially if it's as fractions. If it can be simplified, then do so. So let me show you what they mean. So you got your plus and minus 1, plus and minus 2, plus and minus 5, and your plus and minus 10. So you're just writing a whole lot. Next we have this. You can just look at this and be like, no! Because I really am not a fan of fractions either. But we have to list all rational zeros. So for this particular time, notice how your constant is 63 and your leading coefficient is 5. So you literally have to write down all the factors plus and minus of what's provided for you. So we did that. So here we go right here. So you got plus and minus 1 and 63. Then you have 3 and 21 and 7 and 9. And then the factors for 5 are 1 and 5. And I forgot did I forget something? Or do I have all of them? Yeah, I was trying to see if 6 went into 6-3 and it doesn't. So therefore, are all of the possible zeros, and we list all of them. We have this. Now notice how you can't have this because as our denominator, we only had 5. Well, I don't know where these numbers came on the bottom from because they should be at the top. The same thing with this part right here. Therefore, we have this little section right here. But be mindful, 6 is not a factor of 63. So that's why it's D. So using your smallest possible zero, we're going to use 3. Because again, 1 goes into everything. So using synthetic division, we're using your 3. So we have 5, negative 7, negative 45, and 63, your coefficient. And we're going to use 3, positive 3, as our smallest one. So using synthetic division, this is what we came up with. So if I rewrite this now as factors, I have x minus 3 and then 5x minus 8x minus 21. Well, we can easily say that this is going to be 3 as a 0. But what we cannot figure out, using this polynomial right here, how to do this. Well, one of the most tedious ways, but it's also the most efficient way, is using the quadratic formula. So now we're going to use the quadratic formula. So again, yay to the scribble scrabble. So given to you, this quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all over 2a. So in this case, we have a as 5, b is negative 8, and c is negative 21. As you can see, where I substituted right here. So once again, we have a as 5, b as negative 8, and c as negative 21. Once you simplify everything, step by step, which is what I did right here, we come out with the square root of 484. Now, the square root of 484 just so happens to be 22. But take heed to the plus and minus. That means you're going to either have 8 minus 22 over 10, or you're going to have 8 plus 22 over 10. Now, this 10 looks kind of strange right here. So once we simplify it, we know that 2 negatives give you a positive. Therefore, you got positive 7 over 5. And then once you simplify this, you now have positive 3. So your overall answer, when you get to this part, because remember, we already have 3 as a 0. So that means that you can actually have the 7 over 5 as a 0, positive 3 as a 0, and negative 3 as a 0. Moving right along. We have number 4. So notice it's once again, it's actually for all the rational roots. So that means we're going to have to do some listing. So notice how your constant is kind of crooked. Your constant is 12 and your leading coefficient is 1. So that's going to be plus or minus 12 over 1 with all of their factors. So we're going to do all of those factors right there. So You got the plus and minus right here. So the factors of 12 are 1 and 12, 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. And then the factors of 1 itself are just 1. So those are all your possible factors. So when you type it in, you can either type it in as pairs, or you can type it in as it listed right here. Plus and minus 1, plus and minus 2, plus and minus 12, plus and minus 3, plus and minus 6, and plus and minus 4. So what I mean by plus and minus, of course, that means negative and positive. Now, the second part is asking you to use synthetic division. Well, let's look at all our listed zeros. So these are your factors of 12 and 1. 1 can go into anything. So your next one that you want to use is going to be this 2. So let's use 2 using synthetic division. So here we go. So we have 2, and then we list our coefficients. Now let's apply synthetic division. So bring down that first one. So now we have 2 and 1. And then 2 times 1 is 2. And then 3 minus 2, negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. 2 times negative 1 gives you negative 2. Combine your like terms, you got negative 6. And then 2 times negative 6 is 12. So notice right here, you have no remainder. So it's 0. When you rewrite that, given that 2 was a 0, so you now have x minus 2. You'll rewrite this part. Notice your powers. You're going to have x squared minus x minus 6. Well, this particular part right here can be factored. So if you think about what can give you 6 and still give you a sum of negative 1, well, you can do 1 and 6 and 3 and 2. Well, if you subtract or add 1 and 6, it does not give you 1. But if you do 3 and 2, you get it. So right here, that's where we've actually factored it. So notice we brought this down. So you got 2 as a 0, 3 as a 0, and a positive 2. So when you factored it, this is what you got. So your zeros now are negative 2, 3, and positive 2. That concludes the video for section 2.2 self-check. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll look forward to going over to self-check 2.3 for you. Thanks.